camera in the planet. It's got a native ISO that goes all the way up to 102,000 and can be expandable to 408,000 ISO. So basically you can see in pitch black. It's got a brand new backside illuminated full frame imager. Now, how big of a sensor is it, you ask? Because everyone's always about the megapixels. And I want to clear something up really quick here because this is a sticking point for me personally, is that the sensor itself is a 12.2 megapixel sensor, just like its predecessor, the A7S II. Now, when you talk about pixels, what are megapixels? They're basically very large light gathering tools. So that's why it allows this camera to really sing in low light situations. This camera also, for me personally, has the best film emulation. So if you love old film like Tri-X or Portrait 400 or anything, stuff like that, this has the best. This has the best feel of an old film camera on the back end as far as images go that any camera I've pretty much ever used. And yeah, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I can crank it at 51,200 ISO and it looks just like Tri-X film. So that's kind of a good baseline to go off of if you know film and you're like, well, what does it look like at certain points? So it isn't advertised as a dual ISO sensor. It's got two chips on the backside, but it actually doesn't act as a dual chip sensor. It runs at 4K 120 at full HD with 240, and it's got 15 stops of dynamic range. And the best thing for me as a videographer, oh, thank God, it's 10-bit 422. And sorry about that. If anyone can see that, right, my son just made a little cameo appearance, almost like this is an episode of Seinfeld. So it's like this does happen from time to time. There's no privacy around here. So sorry about that little blip there. The internal thermal management. So when you're talking about 10-bit footage, RGB, which is 8-bit, 8-bit RGB is about 256 shades of red, green, and blue. Now, when you talk about 10-bit footage and the flexibility you use on a video application, because yes, if you haven't guessed it, this camera is built for the professional video enthusiast in mind, or professional videographer, Hollywood, short form documentaries, even long form using the proper tools, commercial. I mean, it can do it all. But again, the reason that full frame imaging hasn't had the opportunity to really exercise any type of 10-bit internal recording is the heat. So this camera has basically a heat sink that wraps around the full back of the camera, around the side of it, that basically it's static too. It's a passive system, so it doesn't make any noise to basically keep air running in front of that sensor so that it doesn't heat up too quick and you can't like scramble eggs on the inside, within a minute and a half or whatever. So that's one of the reasons that this camera is such a wonder of engineering. It's got the world's most advanced real-time tracking and eye autofocus, which hopefully we'll be able to see here in videos shortly, because that's obviously very important. It does animal eye autofocus really well. It is honestly 2 times faster readout than any camera we have ever produced, and a reduced rolling shutter, and obviously active mode image stabilization, which we're going to talk about. So let's go quickly. This is a shot actually shot at 409,600 ISO, just to show you exactly what it can do when it's all the way cranked out. And obviously for color details, it is spot on. Now back to real quick with the 12.2 megapixel sensor, what I want to talk about real quick is that my first full frame, my first professional camera when I started getting gigs, and probably the one I've had the most published images out of, whether it be music, sports, editorial, would be a 12 megapixel camera. So if you're looking from a cropping, you're saying, well, if I want to print, how big can I crop? Honestly, you can crop fairly large, probably about within a third of an inch. Actually, hold on a second. I'm gonna do something here. I want to go off script, and I want to, let's see here. Stop sharing real quick. Give me 1 second here. I'm gonna get a picture real quick that actually I just had framed. Ow, ow, ow. Sorry, I'm having arm troubles. This is 12 megapixel, and it is a fairly large, and this is actually probably about a 20% crop. So, and that was published in 2010, I think, on the front page of Der Spiegel in Germany for when the band Rammstein came to Madison Square Garden. So it can really crank out. So I don't think cropping, I think if you're a birder, it might affect you a little bit, but I don't think on everyday use that using a 12.2 megapixel camera, even for still imaging nowadays, is wrong. I mean, personally, for me, perfect is 24, which is what we're going to talk about with the A7C. But I just want to show you that a little bit exercise what you can actually do with these cameras. All right, so 15 stops of dynamic range. Awesome. That's bigger that's larger than most cameras. The new A7, I think the FX6, which is a full frame cinema camera, is coming. I think that's might be 15 and a half. Your traditional DSLR variant and equivalent usually runs at about 12. So when we talk about dynamic range, we're talking about the levels of white to gray, basically. So we're talking about all the detail work. So, and you're talking about the safety net that you get in exposing. And when you're exposing video, it's not near as forgiving as still imaging. So you want as much dynamic range as possible so that in recovery mode and when you're in post-production, you can color grade and get everything really nice and tight, because odds are in a lot of those situations, you'll never get that chance to redo them again. Now, rolling shutter. When we talk about rolling shutter, I'm going to play this real quick. There's some visual aids here. If you can see on the left, that's the A7 III and then the A7S III. So the A7 III, which is like the A7C sensor. So when I talk about A7 III, a lot of that does go over to A7C. We talk about rolling shutter. Now, rolling shutter basically means that when you don't have a physical shutter present and you have everything's electronic, like your sensor is pulsing on and off for either a still image or obviously in this case, we're talking about video. One of the reasons that people prefer and have to pay exorbitant amounts of money more for bigger cinema cameras, that some that have feature a global shutter, which is basically all the data is being read at once from top to bottom. On a rolling shutter, it's not able to read data that fast, so it's lines. And there's some cases are line skipping just to recreate pixels, and that's what basically helps create what's called a rolling shutter effect. So if you have like say, for example, let me see, do I even have an example on here in this presentation? I don't know that I do, but let's just say, for example, you're a golfer doing a golf swing and you're swinging forward and you're taking an image and the golf club looks like a boomerang or something like that. It's not actually bowing, it's just how the data is read. So what this is illustrating is that the A7 III has basically a 3 times reduced rolling shutter than any other camera out there in that class. And that's a big deal for this, especially as videographers. 4K, you're getting 10, again, I'm going to keep reiterating this because 10-bit people, you get 10-bit, plus you get 16-bit RAW out of this using what's behind me is known as a Ninja 5 from the Atmos. So it's ridiculous. So I didn't expect that with this camera, and we're going to go over it when we look over the outboard of it real quick, but it's awesome. This one I don't need to talk about too much. Slow and quick motion, so 120 up to 240. You're getting some nice shots. Those of you that have reinvented yourself during the pandemic as a born-again YouTube chef, these are all very, very good opportunities for you to use this camera and make everything and make food look as appetizing and sellable as ever, and your recipes. On the left-hand side of this slide, I just want to point out the fact this is a 60-bit RAW output. The Atmos Ninja 5 is the contract we have for external recording. It's a very popular application or a popular tool for video application, especially in our cameras, and has been for years. I've been a huge proponent of Atmos and used their gear for a long time, even before I joined Sony. Just to do solid state recording, and I have bigger drives. I mean, heat management. It's just been, obviously a nice fail safe for what I have. Obviously, the A7S III has a lot more internal tools to manage your storage and recording capability, but this is certainly something you may want to think about as an accessory to your purchase if you are going this route. Also has a high efficiency codec, H.265, so an XAVCS, which is our own little wrapper, our own codec wrapper that we use. Basically, you have a lot of data pulling in there and keeping the file sizes pretty usable so that when you import them into your computer, they're not running rampant and shutting you down or making, not letting you do any of the other processes, because that's a big deal. Plus, you have 10-bit HDR, which is very, very cool. For if you know HDR photography, you can do HDR video. Another difference that separates A7S2 from A7S3 is the fact that you have 759 phase detection points now and 425 contrast points of focus. So what that means is it covers 92% of the surface, and it can basically focus in the dark at f16. That's what that means. That's with that sensor. So think about that. In the dark, f16, tack sharp eye autofocus. It's real. I've done it. It's awesome. And our real-time IF has been improved 30% on this camera. So basically the way that our autofocuses keep evolving is we're using an artificial intelligent algorithm that basically recognizes features, skin tones, eyes, shapes, any type of contrast points, and it can actually memorize them. And it can track inside of traffic, like say, for example, you're at a Lehigh Valley Phantoms game with Dan's Camera City, and you're looking at a defensive line move shift against, or, you know, a offensive trap, and or defensive trap, sorry. And you want to try to get the offense swinging in and going in and out of players, depending on what team you're looking for, but it'll be able to track in and out of traffic, which is, for the sports shooter, is really impressive. Eye autofocus. Can't say enough about Sony's eye autofocus. I mean, it's pretty much kept us at the top. It's now it's full throttle with animals. A lot of, especially people at Dan's Camera City, love animal eye autofocus. So, and I love dogs, so I'm right there with you, my friends. But we were actually supposed to do, I think earlier this year, maybe it wasn't, I thought it was, but a dog, you know, something to do with our showing off our eye animal focus for animals, and it didn't get to happen. So hopefully that'll be happening next year. This shot I shot in Central Park. Right the day after I got the A7S III, I was doing the first race that was allowed back in New York City. And as far as I know, it's still the only one that's happened. But it was a New York triathlon series, and I was out there in Central Park at 5 a.m. And I had the A9 II, but of course I took out the A7S III because I really wanted to get some nice low light images. And this is clean out of the camera at 51,200. And you can see that there is still a lot of detail in those lights, and that light in particular, as far as, you know, really capturing the atmosphere, and it's not blowing out. There's no, you know, no distortion or anything like that. And it's a really solid. This is a portraits, A7S III for portraits. This is ISO 1200. And then obviously we get into the active image stabilizer, which I think is very important. So on the left is kind of the random SAM 5-axis stabilizer that we're famous for on all our cameras. And on the right-hand side is the new active IS, which basically gives you now a stop and a half to an already great thing. So it almost acts like a gimbal for video applications. Now this is only available, and it only works on native Sony glass, just like our advanced eye autofocusing. It's only native glass, not third party. Sorry, kids. But as you can see on the active image stabilizer, it is going to crop at about a 1.1. But it does do full frame 4K, but it is a 1.1 crop. So that is something to take note if you are using the active image stabilizer. But again, I mean, for those of you that do run and gun shooting and that want to do things on your own and not have a big crew or have a gimbal operator and focus puller and all that other fun stuff, it's just it's very, very useful. Obviously we're going to talk about the tilt screen, tilt flip screen, which is invaluable. It's probably, in addition to touch operation on the menu system, are two of the biggest features that we've had requested. And even for me with my chubby fingers, it works really well. Touch focusing, touch menus. The menus have also obviously been changed. So those of you that are current Sony users that are like, wait a minute, what's going on? Yes, it's become more compartmentalized for people like myself. It's just one more thing I do have to learn in addition to our other current menu system, which is, so this is kind of almost like a third iteration of the menu, whereas, you know, the A7 III series and 4 basically have what's known as version 2. Which is all very useful, and yeah, it's customizable, but this is also color coded. And you also, the fun thing is now that on movies and stills, it actually changes all of your custom functions and your function menu settings. So you don't have to run back and forth. So if I'm going from menu mode, I'm going from movie mode to still mode and manual or whatever, all my buttons are going to change to what I use usually for stills. And then I can program in whatever I want for movies and so forth. But it's very nice. So, and also it'll pinch. So on previewing pictures and stuff like that, you can zoom in just with a pinch. So that's one thing that Everyone's been asking about their lease customers, future customers, current customers, and I've been very happy to announce that we do have that in this guy. It is not an A7C, but it is an A7S3. So that's one of the things that we have to mention here. Okay, I talked about that. Good. I'm ahead of myself. Awesome. Let's see here. So basically intuitive flick operation. Let me see if this, okay, so that's kind of working. So kind of showing you exactly how the touch works, all of that other fun stuff. And again, those aren't my fingers. That is actually, I don't think that is me. That's one of my coworkers out in California. Because we did a series of demo videos with these cameras to kind of organize a masterclass presentation and try to really get inside, because still a lot of people haven't been able to get out to see this camera just yet. The viewfinder is what really surprised me, because obviously in a video application, you mainly either look through the LCD or you know, it's usually not up to your eye or anything like that. But it's the world's first QXGA True Finder, which is 9.44 million dots. It is the most organic and natural looking EVF on the planet. It comes native at a 41-degree field of view. So if you're looking to pre-compose shots, like coming into frame, especially for action, you can see a little bit more of the peripheral action outside of the veins of the composition. And it can run all the way up at 120 frames per second. Now, for those of us that do wear glasses, you can reduce that to 33 degrees if it kind of looks funky for you. World's first dual CF Express Type A slots. So these things, let me see if I can, I hope I have this in this media in here, because if I lost it, I'm going to be irritated. Or my kids, they like to play with it. But for those of you who can see, this is the CF Express Type A. It can read up to 800 megabytes per second. It can read 700 megabytes per second. It is incredible. So that you can also run SDXD, don't get me wrong, but if you are running a CF Express Type A card, you should generally run two at the same time, because it's going to defeat the purpose a little bit, because the speed of the cards or the slots are going to default to the slowest card. So you can run both. However, if you're running CF Express Type A, I would just recommend either using one or using two. And for 80 gigabytes, it's about 18 minutes of full frame 4K 10-bit footage at 60 frames per second, if that's what, just to kind of go forth. I use the Ninja quite a bit with it, with new advanced hard drives that are really, really fast to help me out with my 16-bit footage, because it fills up really quick. This is a shot, I think, at 102,000 ISA out in California. I know it may be a little bit, excuse me, maybe a little bit slow here for you coming down here, but again, it's pretty fantastic stuff. Okay. Scott, any questions so far? Or yes or no? Okay.
Sorry. Let's see. The only question I have, like the one that popped up in the chat, was if there's time, would you talk a little bit more about video? Yeah, and it looks like you're talking a little bit more about video.
Yeah, I can talk about video all day. I know some people.
I didn't actually know how much video work you did. Like, I know you as a photographer.
Yeah,
I didn't realize you did.
Yeah, no, I've worked with HBO, CBS News, Dateline, CBS, Madison Square Garden, Prudential Center, NHL, NFL, NASCAR. Yeah, I freelance a lot, so I'm out there quite a bit. You've probably seen some of my stuff and you just don't know it. So, awesome. But yeah, I have a lot of national work out there, and that's pretty much a lot of my history as an editor and a producer and shooter. So that's the reason I'm here, actually, because Sony's like, we need someone that knows video and stills. So I'm trying to help bridge that gap just a little bit.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, this shot here was
you were just showing us in the park there.
I'm sorry.
What was the ISO that you were shooting there? You were like just in the dark.
Hold on a second. I'll show you. This is 51,200. So it's ridiculous. 51,200 ISO. Yep. And that's right out of the camera to my phone, to be honest. I haven't edited that at all. Maybe I should. but that is, yeah, 50. And look at all of that detail. And actually, the next one is one of the other images I shot in the park. Let me go back there. Okay, so this is what the native eye sees. Okay, this is so I think this was probably around 1600, 3200 ISO, something like that. And then this is what came back. So this was shot at about 102,000 ISO. So it's remarkable. And this is in Central Park. So you can see kind of stars. I don't know if you can see, I can see stars. And then there's, Brass Parkway, everything. And that's just handheld. So, I mean, yeah. let me just go back because that's what the native eye sees, really. I mean, I could not see much more of that. I couldn't see. It was dark. And then this is what I was able to bring right back in. So it sees beyond human vision. I mean, I think that's one of the mantras of A7S III, but some people just don't understand until they see it, and it helps to see images like, okay, well, what did the light actually look like then, or lack thereof? And, that was kind of it. So I think this is a kind of important slide to show because it helps illustrate, exactly what 15 stops of dynamic range can actually do to your images. And again, I mean, it's 12 megapixel imager. It's beautiful, but I mean, it's the quality of the pixels. And these are very good pixels.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. This, my comment, I mean, he says it's 640, so he's speeding this up. This is at Santa Monica Pier, I think, in LA. So he's going up. This is ISO 1000, 1250. So we're slowly bringing things in. And this is, I love this clip because it's very, very helpful. 3200, we just keep kind of going up. But you see now there are people on the beach. And this is all using S-Log3. So S-Log3 is our hyper gamma, and the base ISO typically is about 800. So clean ISO 800, all the way up to about 16,000 ISO, if you think about that. So 16,000 ISO, but obviously it's a very flat image, so you have to color grade it. It's almost like taking a raw still photo. But this is kind of it. So this is ISO 51,200. Here we are, one of my sweet spots. 64,000. I mean, you can see exactly. I mean, it's really cool. I mean, that's one clip that gives you the wow factor. So I'm really happy he did that. Audio. So audio is another component that we're not going to go too much into because obviously we're a very limited time. But we have what's known as a mesh shoe on top of almost all of our cameras, especially the Series 3 cameras, moving up. But on Series 4, we have a new multi-interface shoe that's a digital audio interface that basically takes some of our preamps, our audio preamps and accessories that you can buy for the Alpha series, which like the XLR K3M, and you can take 12 bits of audio and turn it to 24. So it's 4 channels of 24-bit audio, which is awesome for those of us that run around and have shotguns, lavalier mics. I mean, it's especially when you're dealing with time code and everything, it helps things out quite a bit. So it gives a lot of great resources. It's free. I mean, the XLR K3M has been around for a few years now, and I've dug mine out because I usually use lavs and other types of gear. But I mean, this thing has turned me into a true believer in this system with that from an audio standpoint. Because prior, I mean, these cameras were still cameras in the first, and then very good cinema cameras, and turned into great ones, and very distant on the audio component. And now they're just true professional machines. I mean, Hollywood stuff. So it's very cool. The record button's been moved, so that's good. So your finger doesn't hit it all the time. You've got a locking program. You've got a locking mode dial, and then obviously the introduction of a Type A HDMI slot for 16-bit video and 24-bit audio is in there. So prior you had a micro HDMI, which is what I'm actually running right now, into the 6600. But now you've got a Type A slot that's in the back of these cameras that is pretty cool. That I can just use a regular Type A slot that you use in your TV or Xbox or whatever, and get PlayStation and run it right into an Atmos or whatever other type recorder you want. So just to recap real quick, 15 stops dynamic range, thermal management, 9.4 million OLED viewfinder, dual CF Express Type A slots. The list just keeps going on and on. In fact, I just updated my firmware yesterday So you can actually use this camera now for imaging edge webcams. So you can use it wirelessly to do streaming, exactly what we're doing right now for HD. So that is very cool. So you don't even have to use any cables. You can just run your laptop, image edge, and create a Bluetooth and wireless connection and run all that stuff over. And obviously it works really well. A lot of my partners in crime use it religiously. And actually the only reason I can't do it today is because I actually have the A7S III over here with me. So it's really stunning. Let's see here. Okay. Now, where are we on? I want to see where we're on time. Okay, 10:36. Let's run over. I want to run over to A7C. There are a lot of other features with A7S III that we can talk about, but since we're running short, let's just go over to A7C, which is the new compact camera. So those of you that came from the A7 or the A6000 series cameras and are familiar with that type of body chassis and everything like that, it pretty much what you get is with the A6600, except it's got a fully tilt screen, which is awesome, and it's got the FZ100 batteries. So the battery life on this camera can just keep going and going and going. Duracell ain't got nothing on this guy, or Energizer, whatever it is. So let's talk about it a little bit. Alpha. Hey, Alpha. I'm not going to run the movies right now, but it is the smallest and lightest full frame camera ever. I can basically just palm it. I can wear it on my side. I can use it as a B camera and A camera. I take it with me everywhere. I mean, just when I thought I couldn't get any lighter, I think I said the same thing a few years ago with my A7R2 or my A7 II. I was like, oh, this is light. I'm going to take this with me everywhere. No, I mean, the A7C, you can go a little bit smaller. Here's a kind of an illustrated diagram as far as A7 III versus A7C. It's 20% smaller than lighter, and it's about the same size and weight as the A6600. This is kind of what you're looking at with the kit. It actually come in the body styles. You've got black and silver. You can tell they didn't like me very much because they gave me the black one. I really would have liked the silver one. And being that I'm a big Leica, I used to be a big Leica guy. I'm like, oh, give me silver. But I'll take what I can get, believe me. So it's got a compact 5-axis in-body image stabilizer. So if you look here real quick, it is a, well, there it is. You can see the sensor. If you can see it shake everything, that's the new image stabilizer. It's got a new shutter curtain. Everything had to be pretty much redone. The processor, the sensor carriage, everything, just to accommodate this small body, as well as obviously you have an offset viewfinder here as well. And then you've got a nice, almost like carbon fiber-esque grip on the front, especially to kind of accommodate people like myself with bigger hands and bigger grips. I will say that in looking at this camera, that I thought, with all the excitement generated from A7S III, that A7C wasn't going to have that much of an impact, honestly, when it was announced. I was like, well, for me, I mean, A7S III is everything I've been looking for a while. So for me, for a video application, astrophotography, it's any type of people of that, A7S III is a no-brainer. The A7C, however, generated so much interest. I mean, people are still just rocking the boat with this camera, and I can understand why. Because from an engineering standpoint, to get a small, interchangeable lens system like this is pretty phenomenal with all the feature set that's included. I mean, it's a 24 megapixel imager, so whereas the A7S III is a 12, this is 24. Excuse me. This OLED is 2.359 million dots. So unlike A7 III, it's about 3 million dots. So there is, you're sacrificing a little bit there, but I don't really notice a lot of the difference. The resolution, the ISO performance is up to 204,800 versus 400,000 for A7S III. And it cleans up, you can run this probably clean ISO at around probably 1200, and then it starts to get a little bit grainy. But I mean, not much. I mean, 3200 is perfectly acceptable. So probably, I'd maybe give it to 6400. So whereas A7S III is about 16,000, this would be about 6400. So this carries 15 stops of dynamic range as well. Great bokeh, so depending on the lens. 693 phase detection points. For the others had 750. They both have the same type of contrast points. Real-time AF and human animal. It's got the new autofocus technology trickling down from A9. So it is a little bit faster the tick on the autofocus than A7 III. 10 frames per second with auto, with a manual and electronic shutter. With 223 continuous shots before the buffer burns out. So basically I can just run this for 223 frames no matter what I do, and I can kill it. But obviously, I've done, I know there may be some birders in the call. That's fine. I've tried. In fact, someone had reached out to me about going out to the shore to check out the snow owls. The past 2 years, I've been dragged down there after, between now and the new year. And it was blistering cold and windy, and I never saw one owl. This is just for fun. I was like, I saw some of their stuff, so I have an infrared camera. That's cool. But I really wanted to get some pictures of these. So with the birding thing, I'm a little bit soured on a little bit. I am going to try to attempt it again. I don't know if it's going to be with snow owls, but I'm supposed to go down to Conowingo at some point. So I'll probably take one of these and see what I can do. But again, 223 shots for you with wildlife and birders is an exceptional range. The battery life is the industry best for everything. It's about 740 shots and about 225 minutes. And honestly, that's a little bit conservative. When I had the A9 out for the first shot with the FC100 in 95-degree heat, I was able to get 5,119 shots off of one battery cycle, and there was still 12% left in the tank off the electronic shutter. So I think that's a very conservative number there, but still, it's very good. We've got high-speed 2.4 gigahertz activity, so on the Wi-Fi and FTP. And it's very superb. Obviously, what we talked about, the detailed autofocusing settings. It's got fast and slow transition speeds for your autofocusing, depending on what type of narrative from a video standpoint you want to take. Now, again, this camera, if we want to talk about video again, the A7C does 8-bit video. The A7S III does 10-bit video. So there's a substantial amount of difference. So there's a lot more compression going onto this guy than there is in the A7S III. Side opening very angle LCD. I think you're going to find that on most of our other cameras now, because obviously with the vlogging crowd, with the type of period we're even in right now, where everyone needs to do things small and independently, I think that you're going to see a lot more feature sets coming out that's going to help us out with that. You have the digital audio video shoe here, which is nice. You have a mic and headphone jack. So it's almost like it's an all-in-one. Do I have the grip? 1 second. I do, actually. So along with like the ZV-1 and everything, you have a nice little grip that you can, a little tripod you can hook this up to, and even wirelessly just run it and set it up and do your video vlogging or family photos, do whatever you want. But it's got nice little control set. It's the best, like 120, 150 bucks you can get, or 100. It's really nice. And obviously we talked about the black and silver variations. I actually haven't even seen the silver one yet. I have been out to the stores, but I never get to see them because all of these cameras are really back ordered. Actually, no, they're really catching up for the holidays. They have them in for the holidays, so that wasn't entirely accurate. But it is hard for me to see a silver one. So if anyone has one on the chat and wants to show me a picture, please post it, because I'd like to see what it looks like in person while someone using it. So I can be jealous. We also, with the release of this camera, came out with a new 28-60 4.5/6 lens, which is actually, I'm a really kind of a prude. People that know me, I don't ever usually use. I love prime lenses. I do love prime lenses, but I forced myself to use this lens for like 2 weeks, and I love it. I really like it. It's compact. It works really well. It's small. It works just like right along the camera. A lot of professional photographers and consumers that have asked me about the camera, especially when it first came out, were women. And I can totally understand and see why. With the hand size, traditionally speaking, of course, this is kind of something. So it's either that, and then and I use it. Actually, I use it with it as a second camera. I like to have them slung. But from a size standpoint, it really makes everything more effective, especially where your finger placements are. So it's been really cool. Like Tracy Bosworth Page down in Georgia, she's a headshot photographer. A photographer I knew in Charlotte. She was, seriously, people are like, can I get my hands on one of these? Can I get it? Way before I even got my hands on one. So it is very popular with a lot of different types of crowds. And I think that's one of the reasons that I think that's one of the reasons Sony developed it, because honestly, some people are having issues with the A7 series. Like, so there were those of us with big chunky hands. Oh, I like this grip. I need it to be bigger. And I was like, no, I need something a little bit smaller and more contained. Because they felt like it defeated the purpose of what a mirrorless camera was. And I feel like this is kind of the answer to that. So these are some of the images shot with a 28 to 60. This is at 38 millimeters. I really love this shot. It's 50 at 5, and that's at 5.6 at 400th of a second. So that's pretty ridiculous natural light. I mean, it just does. It's a great street and walk around lens. Very, very cool. This is kind of the, whoops, let me go back here. So these are kind of the functions, the differences between A7 III and A7S III. I mean, A7 III and A7C. The A7 III also has dual card slots, which I find usable, and has a front dial. A7 III has a front dial and a rear dial, where this one, basically, it's almost like the 6000 series, where you have everything kind of on the back and located. Nothing on the front there. Oh, sorry. I hope you guys like my nails. If you can see them, because my daughter loves to, my 3-year-old daughter needs to paint somebody's nails. So she paints mine and just kind of sit there. So we have that. Let me go through here. And now from a lens standpoint, I thought I'd share some of the lenses that I use that I really enjoy. Obviously, the 24-70 2.8 is a great editorial piece for me. I do love primes, but the 24-70, if you have an all-in-one, you know, and need to take something out there, G Master 24-70 is awesome. At 60 lines of resolution per millimeter, it really can take maximum, you know, it can maximize the use of even the 61 megapixel cameras, 8K, 12K. It's very cool. The 85-1.4 G Master, probably the softest bokeh I've ever seen or ever used. Really gives new name to the Dream Machine for what an 85 millimeter typically is. Obviously, a 70 to 200 2.8. I recently had to do. I know that we're the sports, and obviously these are stock photos I'm showing right now. But I had to, since professional sports is kind of, you know, it's the editorial side of it, at least a lot of it has been down. So I took to just doing my whole kids soccer league. We're doing as a fundraiser, and just amazing between the 200 to 600, which I'll show you here in a second, and the 70 to 200, what those lenses are capable of. I mean, it really is fun to do. Scratches that itch. The 16 to 35 2.8. One of my lightweight favorites. Between that and 12 to 24 2.8, really cool stuff. The 24, I love wide angle primes because I love environmental portraiture. The 21.8, I actually just bought. I love that lens because it can act like a macro lens, can do wide angle, it can do environmental. It's just a really Swiss Army knife for me, and it's a really lightweight prime. And I can run on the 6600 really well, or the APS A7C without, you know, just like I can this lens. It just, there's no weight to it. And then obviously the 200 to 600, which is a monster. And if you can get your hands on it, that is probably my favorite wildlife lens. That's sport. So that's what I've got here. I'd like to just, and actually I think I ended just on a good note because we got about 10 minutes to do some Q&A. I can walk around the camera with you guys, can do whatever you want. But I did want to say that you get a free 8x10 print with a coupon code, Sony 8x10. Is that the code? Yeah, I guess that is a coupon code.
That's the code.
8x10. That's the code. So please make sure you take advantage of that. You've got some really great people over there. I really appreciate the time. And let's get to it. Do we have any questions? Anything I missed?
Let's see. Okay, here's a good question.
Water. Go ahead.
The question is, okay, if I don't shoot video and I currently have an A7 III, is it worth it to upgrade to the A7S III or to the A7C?
Again, what's the application?
What's your sort of upgrade?
Yeah, what's the application?
Right, yeah.
Again, if you're doing astrophotography, if you're doing, I mean, if you love film, if you don't print billboards, if you, let's see here, I'm trying to think of any other caveat there. Other than that, if you don't do sports, I mean, I mean, if you're not doing like action stuff, I mean, if you're doing environmental portraits, yes. If you're doing, although, I mean, printing wise, you're gonna be limited probably about 30 inches. But otherwise, I mean, those cameras, if you're using a lot of like really old glass, like old Leica glass or Canon F lenses, screw mount stuff like that, I think the A7S series is the best to do that with, because that really brings out the grit and the vintage film look that those lenses were built for. Sometimes, like if you're using a cam like an A7R, it's just too sharp. and the glass, it's just not built for it. Like it sees things that glass, some refractions that things weren't meant. Now the A7 III, if you have the A7 III, which to me, that's the workhorse, that's a great all-around camera, and you're totally happy with that, and you need something else to go alongside of it that's going to emulate that to a degree, autofocus slightly faster, be 20% smaller, no dual card slots. You can work with a single card slot, and you can operate without, your front finger and your rear thumb, doing all the manual stuff, and you run in program, aperture, shutter mode, then yeah, that's for you. But it all depends on your application. I think that's a long answer for a short question, but that's what I have for you. What else?
Let's see. The A7C, does it use E-mount lenses?
Yes, every camera that we have is, and it's one mount. So that's a great segue. That's a good segue question, because we now have 60 lenses. In fact, we came out with a counter mount that I was actually supposed to give her to Dan's about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden there are 3 extra lenses. So the thing said 58 lenses, and now it's like 60 lenses plus. Yeah, it's one mount, so you can reverse. You can use, when it's real easy to understand, and this is something that took me a while to get, but E mount is like the 6000 series. FE is full frame E mount, so you can use both on any of the cameras. Like I can use full frame lenses on the crop sensor, the APS-C cameras like the 6000s, and I can use the full. I can use those lenses on the the A7 series as well, and it'll just automatically crop. Or if you want to have a nice little fisheye look to it, or like someone like looking through a keyhole, you can turn that off. But again, because the size of the lens opening, it's not going to look proper unless you crop the sensor. But yeah, they all work together. So I mean, they screw right in.
So it will work, but it's not native E-mount, right? It's like it uses the FE. It's the full frame, despite the fact that it's the same mount.
It's the same mount. It's the size of the lens opening. Yeah. So sure. F is for full frame, and then E mount is just regular APS-C, like when the NEX series came out. But that's a really good question, because people get confused, because how many 50mm lenses we have? We have 3. We have 2 1/8s. We have 2 1/8s. One of them is an optically stabilized, which is for the 6000 series. And then we have the nifty 50 they're both like $200, $250, and it's the best lens you can buy for the money.
Oh, heck.
And then one's full frame, one's not. And then you have a 51.4 Zeiss. It's about $1,600. So you kind of, and then there's a 55 1/8. So yeah, I mean, you have 60 lenses. I mean, when I joined Sony, there were less than 5 native lenses, and now we have 60. So it's
really built out that library. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got them all right underneath my right desk here. Not all of them, but I've got a good chunk of them. There are still a few things. Like if I could get my hands on a 400mm or a 600mm, I'd be pretty happy.
Nice. What's the weight comparison between the C and like the R2?
The C is still going to be about 15 ounces lighter. Or 15% lighter, 15% lighter, 15% lighter. Yeah. Yeah. The R2. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, remember the S series, the S and A7 III, they're not that. I mean, let me hold on. It's like, sorry, I keep looking around here. Okay. All right. Hold on. Like this is my R2. This is Betty. This is my infrared camera, which is all taped up. I love this camera. I've had it for years. And then this is the A7C to go alongside of it. Oops. So, yeah, there is some. It's definitely a lot lighter than the R2. So maybe I'd still say 20 to 25% lighter. Of course, some of that might still be the L bracket that's on there, but not much.
Well,
this thing is. I mean, it is featherweight light. It is featherweight light.
Awesome. How about weatherproofing on these things?
Yeah, there is advanced weather sealing. Oh wow, here's some questions. Oh wow. What was weather sealing? Yes, there's advanced weather sealing on A7S III and water and dust resistant. The A7C does not feature the same as the A7S III. It is advanced, it is good, but I mean, I really wouldn't take it out in the torrential rain like any other camera.
Like a downpour.
Yeah, yeah. Someone's asking. Okay, let's see here. Yeah. Okay, someone just asked, anonymous, on the A7C chart, why mention so many negative points when compared to the S? They are two different cameras. Did I compare the A7C to the S? I don't remember that. Did I? Is it on there? I don't know.
There was one comparison
There is
chart.
no negatives. They're just different. They're not
Just different.
negative at all. I mean, obviously, the A7C has 24 megapixels. The A7S3 has 12. You're also looking at a camera that's twice as expensive as this one. Pretty much. I mean, so you're looking at $17.99 for an A7C versus, you know, $3,400 for A7S3. So yeah, there are going to be a lot of differences, but again, it's not negative. I mean, they're just going to be different applications. Like,
right, it's like
for
what is
portraiture,
the right tool for
portraiture,
the
the A7C is going to be a better camera. For even for street photography, for cropping everything, A7C is going to be a better system for most photographers. And if you're comparing even focusing points like 693 to 750, there isn't that much of a difference. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
There's a tick of a millisecond. I mean, I can't gauge. I can't do a speed test on these guys. But yeah,
right, like I remember when cameras had like 8 autofocus points.
Yeah, right.
And that was a lot.
Even 8 megapixels was a big deal. Remember? I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know what the.
Well, I mean, I also remember when shooting 1600 speed film was really, really fast, and now you're at like 51,000 and something.
Yeah. No, I mean it's tremendous. I mean, I think I look at it. It's very simple, folks, and this is very simple. So let me talk to you a second about this. That there are thousands of cameras out there. And if you are getting bad images or video out of them, it is not the camera's problem. It is not the camera's fault. Every camera out there, I mean, I don't care what camera I have. And I go through this. I challenge myself with this. I'm just going to take the best pictures out there. I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way to do it. I mean, I'm used to being in pits with other guys, especially seasoned veterans. I've had to cut my teeth. And especially if you're a videophile, you think photographers are sticklers, video guys are, and I think a lot of people on my team are now knowing that now that they have to deal with a lot more videographers, especially with the success of the S series and the FX series. But I mean, you have people that are grizzled; they just do things the way they've always done them. And I honestly, these cameras are tools, so they will operate the way you want them to. They're the most automatic systems out there, but they're also the most customizable and versatile. So I love the fact that my camera isn't going to be set up near like someone else's. So if you pick up my camera, you're not going to be able, oh, I mean, let's just do it this way. No, I mean, maybe if you throw it in manual, but I have my custom button. Everything is set just for my taste, and always has been. In fact, that's one point I have, stickling point I have with show work. Like when I take my demo cameras out, and like I have to do a gig with one of them the next day or something, and I have to make sure that I zero that thing out, or I hide a menu like a memory recall button that'll just automatically sync my settings because I know I need them there, and people like to play around with them and, you know, change everything up or do whatever.
All right.
But again, I mean, there are no negative points about any of these cameras. I mean, the A7C is a brilliant. If I had to buy one right now, I mean, if I had, like, depending on it, like for family vacation, all around work, it'd be A7C. I mean, there's no, you know, but if for gigging, you know, and for work, for videography work, yeah, I'll go with the S3. Just honestly, I've been spoiled by 10-bit footage on bigger cameras for so long. It's hard for me to go back. That and low light stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, man, that thing's a low light beast.
Yeah, no, it's
all right.
Amazing.
Let's see. Okay, so I think this is probably a good one to end. What do you recommend for portraits, macros, and birding combined? One camera to do those 3 things.
Dear God. Macro, what the heck? I need another cup of coffee for this one. Okay, wait a minute. Let's see here. Give me portrait, birding,
and macro.
Macro. That's okay. A9 2. A9 2 all day. I mean, that's honest. I mean, the A9 2's been getting, I mean, for birding, I mean, the A9 II has a shutter speed of 1/32,000th of a second. I mean, no other camera has that except, well, the RX10 IV does. And that's an all-in-one beast. But I mean, that's its own animal. But if you're talking interchangeable lens, main portrait, birding, macro, the A9 II is 24 megapixels. However, if you had, okay, well, if I can't have the A9, what's the next camera? Honestly, it's going to be either the A7 III or the A7C. Maybe even the A7C to a degree that shoots at 10 frames a second versus the A9 II, which shoots 20. But it has the same focusing mechanisms that A9 II has. It just doesn't do it at 60 times a second. I mean, the A9 II and the A9 are, I mean, I own the A9. I love the A9. So the A9 is I mean, it's incredible. But A7 III, I mean, it's right there. It's 693 face points, 24 megapixels, which is my perfect size for a sensor. Just give me 24 megapixels. That's all I need. I don't need your 61. I don't need your, I mean, really, I mean, your computer doesn't need it either. Because I really don't crop that much. I just don't crop that much in my portraits. So I can, and up to this point, I mean, I love medium format photography. So yes, I do love the R4. I have the R4 as a sample. I'll use it. But if I had to, I mean, when I bought A7 III, I mean, the A7 III is a workhorse, or the A7C. I mean, but the A9 is going to be, if you have for birding, for the one to rule them all, that's going to be the one for that application. I mean, more people. I mean, I've got a guy that we just did workshops with. He's a Zeiss ambassador, and you know, he used my A9 for all of 15 minutes, and then he ran out and bought it. You know, I mean, I'm serious. I've never seen anything like this. He's like, I gotta have the A9, blah, you know, and he ran out and got it. I was like, whoa. So, I mean, until you use an A9, you see zero. I mean, the A9 has zero blackout. So when you're shooting, you know, what that means is if you're shooting a multiple 100 frames or whatever against a bird in flight, the shutter does not, you do not black out. Your autofocus is tracking the full way. I mean, it's got the highest hit ratio of any camera I've ever used, period. 98% hit ratio. Any gig I do is with A9. I mean, you should see the stuff. I mean, we just did some for another New York triathlon race out in Rockaway, the beach, where there's swimming, running, and cycling. And it was just, I mean, I think the worst part about that camera is that you have to pick which shots you want to use. You know, it doesn't, you know, I mean, you're just like, oh, I mean, which one? So yeah, I mean, A9 and the A9 II are, and for macro, I mean, you can't lose.
Awesome. Well, thanks once again. I think that's about all we have time for today.
Great.
But thank you very much for coming out and giving us a look at these cameras today and really going in depth for us. Some great stuff to look at. Everybody, don't forget, you've got that Sony 8X10 is your free 8x10 print for joining us for this webinar. Little thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, guys. Good. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you for this grown-up time today. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you guys out on the road very, very soon. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
See ya.
All right.